Welcome to Espiritu Coffee Chats, the podcast where we blend wellness, spirituality, and business to help you live with intention and balance.
We're your hosts, Valerie and Arlene, two Latina entrepreneurs here to guide and grow with you. Welcome back to Espiritu Coffee Chats. I'm your host, Valerie, and I'm here with my co-host,
Arlene.
And today we're talking about some really fun stuff. We're going into human design.
Whoop, whoop.
So today we're going to be talking specifically about the Splenic Center, and I'm going to let Arlene lead here because she is the queen of human design, and if you guys have been listening for the last few episodes, you know that I completed Arlene's certification course, and so I am learning from my teacher in real time.
Yay. And Valerie has just been such a sponge, and we will definitely be diving into the spleen. You will have a perspective of somebody who has a defined spleen, which is me, and then Valerie, who has an undefined spleen. And the reason why that is so important is because whether you have it defined or undefined, you still need to pay attention and listen because you're going to realize how it expresses. And so this is such a good example because she is the undefined and I am defined, and how we can play off of each other, but also how the undefined works, and then my perspective on how the defined works. So we are going to jump into some fun themes. And the theme for this episode is the Splenic Center, also known as the fear gates. With human design, everybody's like, what the heck is a spleen? If you've watched Love is Blind England, you'll know and remember this guy was talking about the spleen, and he listens to his spleens, and his spleen talks to him and all this stuff. And if you haven't watched it, go watch it. But he was actually like not the best example of human design and how to use human design. But I just thought I'd mention that because that was like a funny episode for me to watch. So the spleen is here to really support us. It is one of the longest energy centers. So in human design, there are 9 energy centers. We won't go through all of them today, because for this episode, we're focusing on the spleen itself. She's the queen today. And I would say it comes from a very feminine energy, actually.
Oh, yeah.
I would say like the root center, the sacral is more of a masculine. To me, if I'm going to label this, I would say it's more feminine because it's very passive. And, you know, you kind of need to slow yourself down in order to listen to what the spleen is going to be giving you, the energetics of it. And so the spleen, because it was one of the first human design energy centers for us to come into, it is one of the oldest. It's where our reptilian brain lives. I mean, obviously we know we have a brain and it's all there, right? But when it comes to the body, if you've ever been in a flight or fight, if you've ever been driving a car and you thought, oh my God, like this car was coming towards you, and you reflex really fast, or you put your arm against somebody else who you think like is going to run into the windshield. That is a reflex. Yeah. That is the fear. That is the body responding to the environment. And so our body is responsive to fear, which is through our reptilian brain. So just think that the fear center is a old, archaic part of you. It's survival instincts. It's where the reptilian brain lives, and it's where the body reacts from. So just wanted to clear that up. It's one of the oldest energy centers. If you're like a one profile like I am, I like to know all the things. And then after that, there were other spleen centers that came about into existence. So the youngest one, if you were wondering, is it's a mix between the G center and the emotional center. So just know that, you know, the spleen center has been around since mankind has evolutionized or whatever, and we needed it because we needed to figure out, could we eat this berry from this bush? And okay, could we touch this animal and get close to it? So it's kind of curious, and it also needs to put itself out in the environment of the world in order to build upon its reflexes. And so now in our modern times, you know, we still have this reptilian brain. We still have this spleen that is working with us on a day-to-day. But how do we manage it in our modern realm? So understanding that it is a part of you that does have this protective element, it's very intuitive, it's running off instincts, and a lot of the gates that are attached to the spleen are labeled as fear gates, and each of them have a certain like theme to them, a certain, what would the word be?
They have kind of like these thinking patterns, like behavioral patterns in a way that go back to the survival patterns. Yeah. I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah. You'll get it as we keep going. This is like, you know, sit down, get your chart out. This is your little mini master class, because this is going to be one that you're really going to want to sit down when I talk with my students about human design and how to look at a chart and do a reading and put a reading together. The spleen center is really one that I do tend to focus on sometimes because it does talk to the different energy centers and it does play a big part in our life. So if you're aware of these fear gates that you might have in your chart that are defined, it's going to help you have an awareness around it. And that's the beauty about human design, because your user's manual, it's going to let you know, hey, these are all the fears that you have to overcome in life. And so the more you're aware of them, the more you're like, oh, okay, let me like tame this little lion down, versus not knowing, then you're just making these reactions off of fear. And so when you have an awareness around it, you can actually like be mindful and be a bird, like just looking at yourself and be like, ooh, I actually don't need to respond in that way. Let me listen to like my body. What is my body telling me? What is the intuition coming through? So that's one thing that you will understand through this context that we're running through with today. So just going through the core themes of the spleen, it's your intuition and it's in the now. It doesn't give you any second chances. So if you've ever had like a feeling that just came to you, like it slapped you across the face and you're like, where'd this come from? I don't know why I thought about this. That is your spleen. That's the intuition letting you know something, like, hey, it's giving you alerts. And it's also in the moment, in the now, and it doesn't come back. So if you have a defined spleen, you usually have a more of a reflex on that. And it's also about survival and health. So if I see an undefined spleen, I'm going to be like, ooh, this person is going to really need to protect their health, which is their environment, because they're going to be more prone to having health issues. Health issues could look like autoimmune disease, thyroid disease, like all those like hidden little diseases that are in the background. Maybe you get colds a lot. And, you know, that's just because it's undefined. When it's defined, you have a little more, I would say, like health mechanisms within you. It doesn't mean that you're not going to get sick or you're not going to get autoimmune disease or all these things. But it's like your body just isn't that sensitive to its environment in that way. Your body is more focused on you overcoming these fears that you were born with, versus when it's undefined, you're just the sponge and you're just here to take in the environment. And because of that, you can just draw in things, and through the people that you're with, through the food that you're eating, all this stuff. Just know that it also governs health. It governs the lymphatic system, your immune system. It's also your body's intelligence, you know. So when you get those little hairs that rise up, that's the intuition, that's the spleen. When you get this like whisper in your head, like that's the spleen. And usually the spleen says no before it says yes. So that's one thing that I've understood and have come to build a friendship with, is that whenever I've had these hard hit no's, it was like, listen to it. Because before I didn't know about human design, and I didn't know that my spleen was like this big old thing. For me, it is in my chart that I would always go against the no's because it didn't make sense in the moment.
Right.
And now I'm like, oh no, we're listening to this because 5 months from now, I wasn't supposed to talk to Karen, who's going to screw me over 6 months over, right? So that's kind of how it works. Like you don't have all the answers, but your body, your aura, the energetics around you are like, this isn't good for you. That person is not good for you. You don't need all the answers now, but all you need to know is like the body chemistry or the aura of this person is just not vibing with you. And with human design, everything is quantum. We forget that human design is actually the bigger thing about it is your aura, and it's quantum physics. So it's things that you can't see. The best way I try to describe the quantum part is like, do you see your modem giving off 5G internet, or on your phone or all the things? So that's, to help you understand like what the spleen is, the energetics of it. It's really a thing that is invisible, but it's touchable. And it's also something of where just being in the moment and listening to the no. It very rare. I mean, it'll say yes, but he's going to give you a no real quick. So that's something that's a huge tip, especially if you have the spleen as an authority. And we'll kind of roll into that a little bit later.
Yeah. And just because your spleen says no the first time, it doesn't mean that it's going to always be a no. Like it could change later down the road. It's just important to be in tune with whether you have it defined or undefined, because all of it will affect you. Like if you, especially I have my spleen undefined. And so I end up picking up a lot of these pressures and these fears from other people who have it defined. So I kind of like absorb it a little bit more. So I need to be conscious of whether what I'm feeling belongs to me or whether I'm picking it up from somebody else. So definitely good to take a look at your human design chart and see whether you have it defined, undefined, and if you have any gates present in there, which we'll jump into in a little bit.
So just remember that human design gates are fear frequencies. So if you have them defined, that means I tend to believe that, at some point we were some soul up in the realms of the heavens with all the stars and the gods and goddesses and God himself. And we dropped into this world knowing what we were dropping into. So usually your defined fears are by your defined gates or channels. And so you came to this life trying to work through these actual fears that you have. For example, the way I explain this, because in my past life, so North Node, South Node in astrology, your South Node is your karmic past lives, right? And so when you reincarnate, if you want to think in that philosophy, you come back into this life, but you're bringing in past life stuff. Of course, I came in with the baggage full of fears. And maybe somebody who has open, like Valerie, she has an open, or I would say an undefined spleen, is, she's here to learn other people's fears and process that and understand the realms of that. And I'm here to just focus on my own and deal with those. And if somebody else has other fears, it doesn't really affect me. Unless like I have an undefined gate or something. But for the most part, because the spleen is defined, I have my own set of fears, and that's not going to change no matter what. Valerie, though, when she comes into the realm of other rooms, even next to me, she might not have ever been like, damn, I didn't have a fear of death. Fuck, now I'm scared. Now I'm scared to die. And then she walks away from that person who was talking about death and all this stuff. And then she's like 3 hours later, like, oh, you know what? I don't even know why I was thinking that. Like, I feel good now. Interesting. That's kind of how the undefined and the defined works. I like to tell people as an example, when you're an undefined spleen, if you grew up in a home who have parents who just had a lot of fears, let's say they watch news all the time because they had defined gates and that's just, they can handle that. But you were the child who was just like, oh my God, just soaking in all their fears. One analogy I'll give is like a fear of heights. Yeah. So a lot of, kids grow up and they'll have parents that are like, no, we're not going hiking. We're not going to go get away from that cliff or get off the monkey bars or climb down from that tree because mom is scared of heights. There's a fear of death in a sense. So then they grow up, they go into the college dorms, they have a bestie, all the friends go and they go on this hiking trip and they're a little nervous, because they're like, well, I've never done this before, but also like, should I? And then they like, yeah, come on, let's go. So they all go on this hike and then they get to this close edge and they have this fear, but then their friends are like, no, come on, let's go. Like, it's good. Let's keep going. Let's climb higher. And they're like, okay, cool. And then they keep going and they get to the top of the mountain. And all of a sudden they're like, yeah, man, that was a great experience. Like, I missed out so much. And I thought I had all these fears and, I needed everybody to get me out of that. And now I just came to new heights and I see all these beautiful views. So that's an analogy on how an undefined spleen could work. Going into undefined versus open. So if you have your chart in front of you and you're like, I don't have anything attached to it, that just means you're totally open. Your spleen is not defined and there's no gates that are there either. So you're open. So you're like an extra sponge of that. Now, when you're like Valerie and you have a couple gates there, but and it's not colored in, it's white, that just means you're undefined. So there's a difference between open versus undefined. Mm-hmm. And the defined gates are you still have your little fear gates, but they're not as strong as somebody who has a defined human design spleen. Now, when you have a defined spleen, it's because you have a channel that's connected from one fear gate to another energy center. So for example, I have gate 44, 26. 44 is attached to the spleen center. And then the opposite gate of that is gate 26, which is attached to the ego center. So now the ego and the spleen talk. So now that makes it defined. So that's the difference of a channel that's in your chart. Two centers are talking to each other because both gates are connected, and that's called an electromagnetic. And then the undefined is when you just have gates, no channels. And then the open is when they ain't anything there, girl. Like, ooh, better take your vitamins. Take your vitamins and be careful of your surroundings. Do you want to add anything before we jump into defining what each gate is?
I think just a reminder, like Arlene mentioned earlier, the spleen is tied to like your health, your immune system, your lymphatic system. So being aware of these things, cognizant, whether you're undefined, defined, or open, and taking those extra steps to make sure you're taking care of yourself. Because if you get too caught up in these fears, or you get too caught up in absorbing other people's fears, then it could lead to like burnout. It could lead to like constant questioning. Like maybe you'll go into freeze mode because you're just too overwhelmed to do anything. So just be cognizant of how you're approaching life in general, because it will have an effect on your overall body. And we want you to be healthy, and human design can be a way to help you be in tune with your body and be healthy.
Right. Yeah, because fear holds us back from our own intuition, which leading kind of like what we started with in the episode is it's feminine, you know, and us as women, whether you have defined or undefined, you're just naturally intuitive. And so it's listening to that. And that's the point of the spleen. It's here to teach us to go slow, like go to the bush and look at every berry and pick one and put it in your hand. And, you know, how does it feel? Is this one of them that you're going to want to put in your mouth? Like it wants us to taste life in a very slow, intuitive, calm, processed way. So that's something that the spleen is here to show us and give context for us. So now we're going to jump into the next part, which is the fun part. So we've kind of given you a lot of background on what the spleen is, why we need to focus on it, what it's there to do for us. So we're going to go and tap into the gates. And as we go through, I can tap into what it feels to be a defined. And then Valerie will share when we come to hers, the ones that she has undefined, because it's funny because I don't have what she has. And in human design, that is quantum aura and quantum energetics. And usually you'll see two people coming together that you become real close with that has the opposite that you need to learn from, you know? So I think this is such a great example of that. So the first gate that we'll come into is going to be gate 57, and that's the instinct for immediate danger. And in human design, they call it the intuitive clarity gate. So this one's very clairvoyant. It's very like, again, in that moment, in the now, it's there to speak to you and give you clarity. Like literally, that's one of the things that it means. So if you have this gate, that means that you're very intuitive. So I have this gate, I actually have a channel, and I get like hairs raised all the time, goosebumps. That's me, like my spleen telling me like, yes, 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 no, 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 whatever, whatever. I literally like somebody will be talking to me and all of a sudden I'll get goosebumps. And I'm like, okay, tell them something, like reaffirm them, like let them know. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's not me. I know it's not me. It's like somebody else. But or even if it does just have to do with me, if I get like a little bodily tingle, I'm like, okay, listen to it. Yes, spleen, what do you want to tell me? So yes, gate 57. So it's also the fear of the future. And this is one that I can definitely understand because with our current political climate, with everything going on, when somebody came into office, I was like, ooh, my fear of the future came out real quick. And my intuition was like, get your stuff together, get whatever you can. If I literally went from like, Armageddon's here. Like I need to plan all this stuff. And I just had this strong urge and it really felt like a survival instinct. And so I got, my whole family actually just finished the paperwork last week to have dual citizenship, to possibly, if we need to, mm-hmm. the chance to possibly leave the country. And that really all came from that gate 57 because it was in that like the future. And I was like, I just can't get rid of this feeling. I need to really listen to it. But it was in a balanced way. It wasn't mm-hmm. like, okay, let me pick up my stuff and move now. Yeah. But it was like more of this balanced. And I'm always worried about the future. And I do notice I catch myself in that. So now that I have an awareness on it, it's actually taking me away from the moment that I'm in now. So that's something where the fear of the future is kind of give you that path of like this like bubble of like what can go on and all this stuff. But it's also call yourself back into the now because this is what this is what's in front of us today. So feel fear of the future. That's gate 57. And then, but the positive side is that you're super intuitive. Like you probably a little witch. And then the next one would be gate 47 and gate 44. And this is the instinct for recognizing people. Usually people who have this gate are really good salespeople. They kind of have a good understanding on like how to read people. And it's kind of connected to the other half of this gate, which gate 26, which is the channel of entrepreneurship. So usually when you have gate 44, you have kind of this like salesy way of like being able to sell to others or knowing like what to buy, what not to buy kind of thing. It's also called the gate of alertness, according to Ra'uruhu. So that's the actual technical name of it. And it's the fear of the past. So again, I have that gate too. I'm like, oh, here I have fear of the future and fear of the past. I'm like, geez Louise. So there's a lot of like life and death stuff that I'm always kind of in the realm of two worlds. But fear of the past, I would say that could come out a lot with trauma. You know, sometimes I literally will have like these old memories and feelings that I can tell my body is like kind of like I'm working against it. And I have to literally be like, nope, it's in the now. Whatever happened in the past isn't going to happen again. And I just have to trust the moment. But with that, it's super alert. It's aware. It's like a secret keeper. It knows everything from the past and it needs to metabolize it and hold on to certain things and let go of other things. But also because of that alertness, it goes like, you know, the best analogy, that's why people who have this make good salespeople is because they know what's good for other people. They don't want to sell you a lemon. They don't want to sell you a lemon. They want to sell you a really nice, strong, sturdy car. So it's just knowing what's also good for the other people because they have a heightness of alert. And they don't want to have you have a junky ass car that you had in the past. So they're very aware of that. Do you want to go over the next one?
Yes. So the next one is gate 50. So this one is the instinct for protecting tribe. This is the gate that I have. But according to Ra'uruhu, it's technically the gate of values. And the fear that's associated with this one is the fear of responsibility. Fear of either taking on responsibility or taking on too much responsibility. Kind of this awareness of being responsible for the preservation of others, for protecting the tribe. And I really feel that. Yeah. And I definitely in the past have like taken on too much to the point where it's kind of like I end up self-sacrificing myself because I'm like, I'm going to do all of these things to make sure that we are taken care of. And then I take care of myself last. Another way that I have seen it play out is in my business because I am an entrepreneur and trying to lead the business. And so in a way, like I have that fear of being responsible for guiding us and leading us and taking us there. And so when it plays out, it's like I will get stuck in overwhelm or in freeze because I'm just too afraid to like move forward and take action because of the level of responsibility that's placed on me, like trying to make sure that this business is successful and that it leads to a fruitful thing in the future because this business is not just for me. It's for me and Chris, for our families, for generational wealth. So for me, there's like a lot attached to this business being an entrepreneur. And if you're an entrepreneur and you're like, that's not me at all, and I just want it for the money, cool. Love that for you. But for the rest of us who have kind of a social responsibility, like Arlene said, in this day and age with this political climate, I think also being a Latina, like it's just a little bit larger for me in my perspective. And so right now, what I'm currently trying to work on is just stepping into that role of being like a true CEO, a true leader, and pushing past that fear of responsibility and being like, okay, we're just going to go. Mm-hmm. I am getting those pings of little instincts like, hey, I have my sacral defined. I have some like open channels in my crown. So like a little bit of intuitive psychic kind of abilities. I'm also a Pisces.
Yeah.
So I'm like trying to match that with like, okay, like, yes, I have this fear, but also I have this other thing that is telling me that I can move forward, and my sacral is lighting up and telling me that like, I really want to do this, that I can do that. So let me push through this fear.
I love that. And the other half of that, I believe, is gate 27, which is the gate of caring. And so because if you had the channel, you'd be like that person that's like, come here, baby, sit on my lap. Let me like breastfeed you and pet you and cuddle you and do all the things. But there's like, because the other half is missing, it's like, well, when do I give this person all of my care and love and nurturing and when do I not? So it's like understanding what that balance is.
Yeah.
And then it's part of the tribal circuitry, which, like you just said, like it's like a lot for you. It comes out with like the tribe, and you know your business is kind of like that family, that tribe that you're creating with Chris, and the generational wealth and all that stuff. So it's a very tribal, collective like thinking. It's and bringing everything together. So, but I'm glad that you also brought up that, because it's not your authority. That's also important to understand. Like the spleen for me is my authority. So only projectors and very few manifestors are splenic authority. So, but most people are, if they have a defined spleen, they're projectors. So if it's your defined, if it's your authority, one, it's defined, but it's also like how you need to make decisions, and we'll kind of jump into that. But for Val, it's not. It's like she still needs to fall back to her authority. Like, should I take on this responsibility? And if her sacral's lit up and it's like, hell yeah, bitch, it's like, okay, let's do it. And if it's like, then she's like, okay, then there goes my answer. I don't need to push forward. So your authority is always going to help you bounce these fear gates, whether they're undefined or defined. And so I think that's something to always remember, that just because you have the spleen defined, it's like it's there to support you with your authority, no matter what your authority is. So the next one is gate 32, which is all about the it's in human design. They call it the gate of continuity? I don't know why I can't say it.
Continuity.
There we go. Continuity. It's called the fear of failure. There we go. There we go. And I have that one. Yeah. So it's the fear of failure. And in the long run, it's like in the highest expression of it, it's the instinct for long-term success. And so with gate 32 being the fear of failure, and me having that, like I've always been afraid of failing in a sense, but it's nice to see my partner who's also a projector who reflects back to me, and he's like, but you've overcome that a lot, because you put yourself in a lot of situations that like most people wouldn't, who'd be afraid to put themselves, and you'll like just overcome it. And I think part of that in my human design, if you look at your charts, all holistic as well. So I am a 3 profile, and 3s don't mind getting down and dirty. So it's there. I do recognize that there is a feel of failure. And if somebody criticizes, Valerie just had to talk about this before our episode. I do take it to heart, but I also am like, okay, but I don't need to take that person's, whatever their opinion is, as, their failure, their view of me. And sometimes I even used that as momentum to be like, yeah, fuck you, I'm going to prove you wrong, which is probably not the best way of expressing it. But sometimes you just need that motivation to get past your fears. And then at the end of it, that's why I think in the long run, gate 32 is about long-term success, because you have to be okay to fail in order to feel successful. And since that's my human design authority, and I'm a projector, I need to lean into that success, right? The word for a projector is success. So you can have success if you're over here holding yourself back because you're afraid of failure. And it could also look like you being afraid of what people think, you hiding on social media because you're afraid that people might see you make a mistake when you talk, or, you're not talking right. Like I cannot spell for the life of me. And I'm like, I don't care anymore. Like I used to care so much about that stuff. And now I'm like, but what I want to do is bigger than that.
Yeah.
So I think that's how gate 32 definitely plays out for me. And so it's there to give you something to overcome. Like all these fear gates are here for you to overcome. And also for you to, once you do overcome them, you actually express the highest expression of them. So that's also the beauty of this. It's like, you're just here to really model that, in a sense, like the highest of failure. Yeah, that's fine. But at the end of it, you get success. And then the next one is going to be instincts for, where are we at? Oh, the fear. Gate 28 is the theme of it is meaning, and the fear gate is fear of death. And so when I was doing readings in the past, and I would like kind of get into what these channels and gates were or whatever, and then I'd be like, yeah, it's the fear of death, or they would see it online, or if they read about human design, they're like, fear of death, like and I'm like, it's kind of like the fear of endings. It's the fear of the cycles. So usually when somebody has this gate, it's all about they need to live their life in cycles, and they usually do. So there's a death and rebirth, a death and rebirth. So when somebody has this defined, sometimes they can have a fear of ending, let's say a relationship, like a horrible relationship, because they're so afraid of that ending, and they don't trust the cycle of life, like the process of life, right? So they're afraid to end friendships. They're afraid to end anything that they're in sometimes, because especially if they know it's not good for them. Because
Yeah.
you're like, girl, why are you still with that guy? You know he's not good for you. And they're like, well, because I'm afraid to end it. And it's, well, no. Then if they have that gate, now you know why. So it's also the gate of whoever has this gate is somebody who's going to be going through those deaths and rebirths, and maybe take out death and rebirth and just relabel it with cycles. You know, they're going to go through these cycles of life, and they're here to, you know, again, we signed up for all this stuff. So they're here to walk through these cycles of life, you know, kind of like the seasons change. And so when they don't trust that and they push away from it, then they don't allow the next new bud to come, right? The next new flower to grow for them to actually get past that fear. I actually I don't have that one. Thank God. I don't have that one. But I think that when I've done readings for other people, that one definitely does come up. And it's kind of like when people get the tarot card, they get the death card, and they're like, oh my God, I'm going to die. I'm like, no, you're not going to die. It just means that there's something around the corner that's going to help you go through this transformative cycle. Mm-hmm. So lean into the cycles of your life, because there's growth within that. And then that's why it's in the long run it's just correct, you know, it's helping you align with yourself and what your destiny is. And so the next gate is let's see, it's
48. There we go.
Yes, 48. So gate is the instinct for developing mastery. Ra'uruhu calls it the gate of depth, and it's the fear of inadequacy. And I have that one. That one.
You have so many.
I know, right?
I feel for you.
Like, damn. Wonder why I went to therapy so much. I journaled a lot when I was younger.
Nice.
Yeah. So for me, what that one looks like is that it's basically connected. The other half is gate 16, which is mastery. So fear of inadequacy is somebody who's always perfecting. It's like, oh, I'm going to write this book. And then they're done with the book, and they're like, you know what, let me go back and edit it again. And then they edit it, and they're like, actually, you know what, let me just add more chapters to it. And it's just the constant, like, inadequacy that they think that they have to keep perfecting, when in the long run, like, they're just holding themselves back because they think that they're not adequate enough. So a really good example that I have for this is I have two really good friends, and they're both projectors, and they've helped me with my business. You know, Leslie.
Yes.
Leslie has the opposite gate of me. She's my friend, and she has the gate of mastery. And I have the opposite gate of inadequacy. So I have all these great ideas, right? And I'm like, but I can never get to the finish line with them because I'm always questioning it. So when she was working, I had my website, and I was like, it doesn't feel good. It's inadequate for me. It doesn't feel good for me. So her and I partner up, and she works on my website, and I give her like my vision and all the things, and she got it and ran with it and turned it into something super amazing, where I was like, I knew what I wanted, so I could clearly give her direction. I can give her, here's what I need and what I want. But I was just always stuck in this like analysis paralysis. So finally she took it in and just made it into something amazing. My other friend, her name's Crystal. Shout out to Crystal. She has done a lot of my logos for my business, because I'm over here like, oh my God, I know exactly what I want. It's all in my third eye, but I can't draw. I can't put it out. I can't bring it out into existence because it's just not good enough for me. So whenever I connected with somebody who has gate 16, now we're a full channel. And now we're the highest expression of bringing, because gate 16 has a natural talent and gift, and they have skills, where I might have all those skills and those talents, but I need somebody else to kind of do that fine edge tweaking. If you have gate 48, like literally sometimes I have to just sit there and be like, Arlene, fuck it, just hit send. Hit send, post. Nothing's going to be perfect. Nobody cares. And a lot of the inadequacy came from my childhood. It came from, you know, me being told in school, you're not the brightest berry in the bush, or, my grades don't reflect my own intellect that I think that I have. I have had to overcome me not feeling smart enough, creative enough, all those things. And I was the one who always had to work harder than everybody to see my talent. But I built endurance. I built the confidence. So just know that if you have that, if you have that gate, that sometimes analysis paralysis isn't good, and do those inner shadow works, because you are enough. Everything you're bringing to the table is good. And if you need help, go find somebody that has gate 16.
Fantastic advice.
Do you want to go on the last one?
Yeah. So the last one is gate 18. And this one is the gate of correction. So fear of authority or imperfection. And it's your kind of instinct for correcting dysfunction. So for this one, you kind of have a fear of being judged by others, or maybe you judge yourself too much. You're aware that there's like patterns that need to be corrected, or if the patterns are fine. Yeah, I lost my train of thought.
Yeah. It's also about, you said it was fear of authority, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So one, they do recognize patterns pretty quick and easily. So my husband has this gait, and I laugh sometimes because I could definitely see the authority part coming out for him. It's somebody who's like, oh, don't tell me what to do. I'm going to do it. And they have a fear of being actually restricted and held back. That's their fear. It's somebody who's like afraid that their freedom's going to get like taken in a sense. So then that's why they have that skill and that capability to kind of challenge authority. So it's always that person, you know, in the classroom when you're little and like the whole classroom's quiet because everybody's listening to what the teacher told them. And then there's that one kid that's just like, let me just shake shit up and let me like raise my hand. Let me press her button. Like, let me go against authority. Usually when you have a channel, it's pretty balanced. You kind of have that knowing when to do it, when not to do it. But when you don't have the channel and you just have the gate, and I've been a witness to this with my lovely husband, and sometimes it's good. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, tell them. You do that. You tell them, because I'm not like, I'm one of those people, like if you're like somebody in a higher position, like let's say like I would never talk back to my grandpa, my mom, my dad. If I was in front of a judge, like I would just be like, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. And my husband, nope. He's like, nope. I'm speaking up for the people, and this is what I'm going to bring to the table, and I don't care. So it's needed. But then sometimes it could be hard to discipline that little child, you know? So it's like, and then as you get older, it could just be like kind of letting it out when it doesn't need to be let out. It's just kind of causing like more chaos in a sense than it is having like calm, cool, collected energy. So it's like you don't necessarily always need to stir the pot just to stir it. Like you can kind of just like sit back and take authority. So that's where that one definitely comes in. And then it does have an eye for, because it's about pattern recognition, about perfection. So it's different from inadequacy, right? It's more of like they have this idea about understanding imperfection and getting past that. So that's where like it's a little different than the gate 48. Just know that if you have gate 18, it's all about you just balancing that authority for the most part. That's from what I've saw from doing various readings and stuff. But also that's something too that, you know, the beauty of it is like you are that person who's the raw. You know, you're the one who will speak up against anything that you feel could be a threat. Because remember, there is that intuition, that instinct of the threat of people. Like kind of like right now, we need some voices to go up against everything that's going on politically, right? So you just tend to see these people be very good advocates and advocating for the people and advocating for others. And so that's such a beautiful thing, right? When we see that, because you're like, man, I wish I had them balls.
Right.
I wish I had that fire. And not to say that we don't, but it's just like there's usually somebody taking the lead in the charge, and they usually tend to have that gate. So I feel like we just went through most of that.
Yeah, I think we covered all of them. Definitely. Yeah, and whether you have your spleen defined or undefined, you're gonna have these fears going on, and in order to push past them or to express them in the highest, one thing that I think could be really helpful is sitting with yourself or questioning yourself and asking like, okay, I'm having this fear of responsibility. Like, am I actually not a responsible person? Do I do things willy-nilly? Like, am I taking action uninformed? And for me, all of it's like, no, I'm doing the research. I'm taking these steps for the greater good of the business, for the greater good of our family unit. So I don't need to have this fear. So I think checking in and being like, okay, is this a valid fear? Am I splenic authority? Is it telling me no, that I shouldn't go this? Or am I maybe a different authority like me? I'm a sacral authority. Like, is this just a fear that's coming up and I need to question it and sit with it and see? Or do I actually need to listen and be like, no, you know what? We're going to take a pause. I'm not going to push forward on this. Let me see why I'm doing this.
Yeah, I think that's like such a great tip. for you to kind of like, again, sit down, slow down, really see what is your spleen saying to you. Or like the show Love is Blind. But yeah, it's very passive. It's very feminine. It's in the now. It's in the moment. But I think we wanted to talk about this episode because a lot of people will make decisions out of fear when that's technically it's just a kind of like an emotion, and it's kind of not something that's always present in and around. And so giving yourself a little more guidance on that. I would also say that if you have an undefined spleen, that if you're taking in a lot of like fear stuff, like watching the news, social media, all the things, right? Like it would be good for you to take a break and be alone by yourself to kind of release all of society's fears that you might just like, because you're like a sponge basically when you're undefined, or especially if you're open. So like literally what Valerie said, like remove yourself. Maybe you take a digital break for a while whenever you feel like, okay, I have the juice now to come back. And like, now I know I'm a little more like my nervous system is calm. Because also think about the spleen as your reptilian self. And the reptilian brain is associated with the, autonomic nervous system? Autonomic nervous system, like the vagus nerve and all that. And that's the fight or flight sequence, you know, and that's such attached to your nervous system. So if you have an undefined open spleen, like if you're in this fight or flight because of your surroundings, then your nervous system, your subconscious is just like always on heightened attention. You're like, I don't know why I'm so stressed out, you know, but if you have an undefined spleen, then give yourself space, time to release, bring yourself down to a parasympathetic state. Listen to these, like on Spotify, there's like Reiki, like little stations, or there's sound healings that can clear out energy from your body. So that would be a really good thing. Journal on things, like just releasing and releasing and releasing, because some stuff is definitely like you're just that sponge that's soaking all of our fears, my fears, all of that in. So that's one thing to notice. The last thing I kind of want to dive into really quick about authorities. So we know that the spleen can be an authority. And so if it is, you're going to always hear no before you hear a yes. And then, you know, and it can change, right? Also, you're going to listen to your body. Like, what are the chills? Are you getting a voice in your head? Like everybody's different, but usually there's a lot of clairvoyances that are attached to the spleen. So you usually are probably a little bit of a psychic witch in your own sense. And then if you have like how Valerie has, no, because you don't have a channel to your
No,
spleen.
I don't have a channel. I only have the gate.
Okay. So sometimes some people will have a channel that will be connected, so a gate from the spleen center to the sacral center, and then that creates this channel. So they'll both be colored and they'll be defined. If you're looking at your chart, it doesn't matter about the color. Is it, because people will be like, well, this one's red and that one's green and blah, blah, blah. No, if they're colored in, that means they're defined. So if you have the sacral defined and the spleen center defined, that means there's a channel. And when the sacral is your authority, sometimes you will bypass your and your and your no's and your yeses and the gut instincts because you have the fear whispering to you. Like it's kind of on vibrate all the time, talking to your actual authority. So kind of like what Valerie said, where she defaults to her sacral. What you want to do is understand that those two are now connected and they talk. So you have to also like literally check in with the sacral and listen to understand like, okay, now I have this connection to the fear. Like, is there a fear coming up behind this? Can I trust this yes that's coming up, or this no, or this this gut feeling, right? Once you bypass that, then you're good. Now, if you have, some people will have their solar plexus defined, which is the emotional authority, and then they'll have a channel that's connected from the emotional authority to the sacral, from the sacral to the spleen center. So pretend that there's just like, what human design is also like a light socket. So you plug into other parts. So now they're all plugged in, right? All those three energy centers are plugged in. So the fear gate or fear center is going to be talking to the sacral center. And if you're an emotional authority, you already have to write out a wave. But sometimes the fear is also going to be talking to, because now there's a channel that's all connected there. So that's where you have to figure out, okay, is this fear causing an emotional reaction? If it is, you can't make a decision. Because if it is causing an emotional reaction, then that's where you're like, okay, this is my spleen talking to my emotional center. And I know this is a little more advanced and complicated, but we want to talk about things that are advanced in your chart. So knowing that, hey, I have these connections to these energy centers that talk to my authority, the more you're aware of it, you can calm the fears that might be popping up and actually give that authority, time, and space to like build a relationship with you. Because a lot of people make decisions out of fear, but that's a moment that's fleeting. That's not your reality. So I think that is like the biggest context for us. I mean, we make decisions every single day. So you want to make sure you're not making them out of these fear states, I guess. Yeah. Other than that, this was a long episode. We covered everything, but this was your master class.
Yes, mini master class. Yeah, I think just kind of to wrap things up, Arlene said in the beginning, the spleen is that kind of original part, that survival instinct, very reptilian brain. So when you're thinking about these fears, we're going back to that survival. And I think a lot of us that tend to come from backgrounds that maybe didn't have a lot of resources, or you had certain traumas growing up, you want to take a step back and think, am I taking this from a place of survival and it's maybe a scarcity mindset, or am I looking at this from a place where I am thriving? We go from surviving to thriving. And when you are in survival mode, a lot of times you are making decisions out of fear. And sure, sometimes though you'll get through them and you'll push through them. And for me, as a sacral authority, I could push past that fear of responsibility and just go do it. And maybe that came from a decision that came out of a survival instinct, but I didn't listen to my sacral and it wasn't actually lighting me up. So now I'm stuck in this place where I'm in this thing, I've built this thing that I actually don't like. And even though I'm a generator, so I kind of have this never ending energy, like an Energizer Bunny kind of vibe. So I get stuck into these burnout modes and I don't take the time to think okay, I made this decision out of survival mode, but actually I want to be in thriving mode. So let me go back and revisit. And, we all make decisions. We all make mistakes. It's fine to reassess, to begin again, give yourself grace. We're all in unprecedented times, as we've been saying since freaking 2020.
Yeah.
So give yourself some grace and, do listen to these pings from your spleen, whether you're undefined, defined, it's like Arlene said, human design is this huge, it's like a large puzzle. So you don't want to just listen to one little piece. You want to look at all of the pieces together.
Right. It's such a holistic thing to look at. So really quick, I don't think we gave an example as a channel. I did give one for my friend Leslie and Crystal and I, but because I have two channels that come out of the spleen, when you have a channel that actually is like your superpower in a sense, it's your I like to say your pixie dust. It's like the universe gave you this gift that you can here's your magic basically. And so when I think about having gate 57, fear of the future, and then the other one is gate 46. Or I'm sorry, 44, those are the two channels that I have attaching to other opposite energy centers. But long story short, I've talked about losing a child. And I remember that when I got pregnant with her, I had an immediate, literally thought in my head that was she's not going to make it. And I didn't know where that was coming from. I was like, what? I just took this pregnancy test, interesting. And the thought, and it wouldn't leave me. I would even have dreams about her passing away. I had a dream that I got shot in my stomach. And I don't know why Snoop Dogg was there in the dream, but and I remember waking up and I was feeling my stomach. I was okay, she's fine. And I used to save, I probably shared this before, but I used to save her receipts from anything that I bought throughout the pregnancy. And I just never trusted it. I never trusted that she was just going to stick around. And then when she was born, I was okay, maybe I'm just tripping out. I don't know why. Maybe I'm just tripping out. So I was just okay, let me just let my guard down with all that. And then, 6 weeks after she was born, she passed away of SIDS, right? Unexpectedly and out of nowhere, right? So, but when I think about that, I was I remember the day that she passed, I was I fucking knew it. I knew it. It felt so strong in me and the feeling wouldn't leave. And I didn't have all the answers. And there's nothing I could have done to prevent whatever happened. But it's again, it was the higher selves above were okay, so this is going to happen to you. And we're just going to give you a little warning. And you're also going to have the capability of overcoming that. And I think that's where I can see where my gate 44, which is fear of the past, coming in supporting because it is a channel. And that gate 57 is fear of the future. That was me, scared of what was going to happen for her future, right? And then everything that happened came true, yeah. But it also gave me such strength because I think I realized like I need to get over the fear of becoming a mother again, because I know I really want to be a mother. I really want to have kids. So I can't like let that hold me back. But also I had to deal with fear of the past, because when I did have my kids, I would have this fear of like, but what if they die? And I still literally have to stop myself from thinking like my brain could go back into like they'll leave the house and I'm like, if I get like, oh, I'm worried about they're going in a car with their friend, because now my daughter's friends are driving. And like, what if she gets in a car accident? And then what if this happens? And what if that? And I literally will be there for like 10 minutes catastrophizing everything.
Oh, no.
And then I'm just like, but no, I can't. It's not what's happening. And I have to trust it and move on. And so I feel like that helps me share that story with you guys to understand that these are really real things that could happen. But also when you have channels, they really do support the overcoming of it. And then now I can sit back and share this all with you and not feel like I held myself back from being one of the most things that I ever wanted to be, which is a mother. So I've overcome that because I always knew I wanted to be a mom. That was like my number one thing to be. When people were like, what do you want to be when you're older? I'm like, a mom. And that also was one of the things where I've had to learn a lot of like fear and overcoming and all that stuff. So I appreciate my channels for supporting me with that. But there's also a struggle with that too. Like, I'm not going to say I don't struggle with those things, but I can see why and how I can get past those things and really see the bigger beauty and the philosophy of those fears and how they can actually bring you closer to spirit and closer to life and closer to your clairvoyances and all that stuff. So I feel like I just wanted to share, when you have channels, they are little pixie dust and they're helpers. And yeah, I think we can end there on that that note. So yeah, we hope that you found this episode helpful, and we want you to really understand your chart. So if you want to connect with myself or Valerie, we are both readers. So connect with us, reach out to us if you're like, what is going on with all this? I really am intrigued by this episode. I want to know more. Connect with us. We would love to do a reading with you, sit down with you and go through all the things about your chart, because we're going to look at it from a holistic way, not just this like one little thing, and really how to embody your chart, and really like what Valerie said, giving like really good tips about embodying and sitting down and working through these things.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much, Arlene, for sharing. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
So now we have all of these new skills, this new knowledge to assess our decisions and listen to our intuition, our bodily responses, however that comes forth for you. So yeah, catch us on the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Espiritu Coffee Chats.
We hope you enjoyed our conversation and found a little inspiration to take with you.
If you loved what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform.
And stay connected with us on social media for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and more.
Until next time, keep the spirit alive and the coffee brewing. Cheers!
Cheers!
Ow, ow, ow.